Lakho mnganwa awungelakho mnganwa timpolompo awungelakho mnganwa
Kuphina kuphi emakhaya amadolobheni asekoplasta khona lapho ubukela khona SABC 1 sasifikele kusini lelihlelo ilungelo lakho it's your right sinethela ke lihlelo lapho mahamba phambili SABC 1 Mzansi for sure siphinde sifakale futhi naku SABC Plus mina ke ngisimpiwe ngcongwane bekunene namhla sikhuluma ke ngebungodi bekuthi umelele umuntu etindzabeni tema contracts. Well, standing surety for someone in a contractual arrangement may seem harmless at face value until the principal contractor fails to honor their side of the bargain. Asasingena endzabeni yethu namhla. So, have you ever been asked by a trusted friend, a relative, or someone close to you to sign a contract on their behalf? In other words, being asked to promise payment on behalf of someone should that person fail to meet their contractual or financial obligation? Well, before committing to standing surety for someone, you must think carefully, as this can place you in a sticky situation. Manje khuluma kabanti ke ngebungodi ke bekuthi ke usayinele umuntu noma ke ukuthi ke akumelele lo muntu phasi kwesivumelane se-surety asesimukele ke bameli. Well, we hope to be joined by Petrus Khumalo kanzi ke lapha e-studio sinathembekile Khoza and a warm welcome. Good afternoon sanimukela.
Afternoon, how are you?
Very well, how are you?
I'm well, thank you.
Siyabonga. Okay, let's start by you telling us what a surety is, the implication of standing surety with somebody and all the repercussions thereof.
So, surety is where you sign a contract with the bank or a creditor that should a debtor or a principal debtor not pay the debt, then you will take over. So usually how they structure their contract is that you stand in as a surety or a co-debtor with the principal debtor to the agreement. So in an event that the debtor does not pay, then the creditor can go against you so that you pay.
Okay.
Yeah. So the contract of surety, it's only enforceable when the debtor defaults. That's when it can be enforced by the creditor. But if the debtor is paying their monthly dues, then they cannot enforce it. But how it's supposed to be structured is that the debtor must be indicated on the contract of suretyship. The amount must be easily ascertainable for a person to know how much is it that you are standing surety for. You cannot, the creditor cannot recover from you an amount that is way more than what the debtor owes. They can only recover what the debtor owes from you. Yeah.
So does it matter what kind of person stands surety? I mean, ngumuphi nje umuntu lo uvumelekile ukuthi ke amelele lo munye in terms of offering his or her services as surety. Umuntu lo unemployed noma ke umuntu lo what kind of person?
Okay, a person how they do it is that they do a credit check on both the debtor and the surety. Because what is the point of making a person who is unemployed to stand in as a surety? How are they going to recover their money? Remember, there are surety agreements that are regulated by the National Credit Act, and some are not regulated by the National Credit Act. So those ones that are not regulated by the National Credit Act, it's when the principal debt is over 250,000, or the annual turnover of an individual or the company exceeds the threshold of 1 million. Yes.
So yini ke authorities like banika ligunya lokuthi ke bayivumele le ngqubo yekwenda isurety nangabe ke kunema risks lamakhulu?
I think it's more creditors try to protect themselves to ensure that they recover my debts in full. Because sometimes you can apply for a home loan, right? Then the person who bought the house defaults. Then the creditor does not recover the full payment. Kube ne shortfall. So when there's a shortfall, how do they recover their money? They can use the surety and recover the balance from the surety.
Okay.
Yeah, those are the dangers of entering into an agreement with suretyship. Especially if you are the surety, then let's say they have recovered funds against you, you have a right of recourse. But if the debtor does not have anything, how are you going to recover what you have lost? You cannot.
Right.
Yeah.
But is it revocable? Like, can I cancel i-surety agreement nangabe kende ubeke asavumelani ngetindzaba letitsite like nangabe seyicalile le contract in the middle of the contract?
It depends on the agreement. Remember, everything is stipulated in the agreement that you sign, your surety. If it allows, then you can. If it doesn't, but remember, you can't just revoke it between you and the debtor. The creditor needs to be involved in the whole process. You can't just decide, oh no, we fought, now I don't want to stand as surety for you. You can't do that. Yeah.
So is surety signed in favor of the original creditor, or can a subsequent creditor enforce it?
Yeah, decision is allowed. Other contracts make provision that the creditor can cede the debt to another company. Okay, so it's you owe me, then I've signed a contract of surety maybe with another party on your behalf. Then I decide maybe to cede it to to transfer a credit to someone else, or maybe you buy the business.
Oh, buying
the creditor's
business
is bought as an ongoing concern.
Right.
Decision can also be applicable. You can't plead good to know I didn't sign the contract with A, I signed with B. If the agreement stipulates that the creditor can cede the agreement at any stage.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So what does it mean? The principal creditor, noma ke loyo ke lommelele ukuthi abe surety akasakhona ke kubhadala. Does that mean ukuthi mina ke lengimmelele nami I have to foot the bill?
Yes.
Like it in its entirety?
Yes. That's what you signed for. Should they not be able to pay, you will pay.
Okay.
Yeah. Or the creditor can recover the cost from you.
So ngubani ke loya abuke I-capacity yami mina lengimmelela lomunye umuntu as surety? Ngubani ke lobuka ukuthi am I capacitated enough ukuthi ke nangabe kende akuba netinkinga bese ke ngiyayibhadala ke leyo mali kayikwenetako?
Initially, when you start the agreement, it's the creditor's duty to make sure that they do credit checks on the surety. The credit checks on the surety to see if you qualify, because they can't take someone who's unemployed, someone who does not have an income. Because the whole purpose of assigning a contract of surety is to ensure that they recover their costs.
Okay.
So they do credit checks to check if that person is able to afford.
So yini ke I-danger ekuthi kube nanaku lekuthiwa ke I-domino effect nangabe mina ngimelela wena as surety and then mina ngicela lomunye ukuthi amelele mina as surety yakho, because nangabe kuyendeka ukuthi mina ke angisakhone kuyibhadala le mali lebe kumele ibhadalo nguwe. So what then happens?
In a co-surety, are you talking about
a co-surety?
A case where there's co-sureties where two people sign a surety for one person.
Yeah.
Same principle. So in an instance where the debtor cannot pay, they can recover from both the sureties.
Okay.
Principal debt.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I-creditor ke yini I-recourse leka ngayitfola nangabe both the principal lo melelo ukuthi abe surety akasakhona ukubhadala?
When surety cannot, okay, so it depends on credit back payment. If there's let's say property, they can also attach the property in it. To recover their amount.
No, in the event ukuthi mina ke lengimelele lomunye ukuthi abe surety and then mina I've got no assets, I've got no property. So mina nje I only have a salary as my only means of income. And angisakhona ke kuyibhadala ke leyo mali lebe kumele ukuthi lo lomunye ayibhadale.
But you didn't lose your job, am I correct?
No.
Okay.
No.
So in that case, if they get an order, they can get an order against you. Should you not pay the order, then kunama applications where they can do against you in order for you to pay on a monthly installment. The amount that is owed.
Njengabo order.
Yes. A court, yes, they take you. If you don't appear court, they can even issue arrest for you to be arrested and brought before court. Then they look at my financial means and or offer if you want to ventilate the settlement processes where you can offer and say, okay, I see debt 100,000. Can I pay on a specific amount on a monthly basis? This is what I can afford, because the processor corner they check affordability.
Okay. So usho mina ke lengimelele lomunye noma ke the initial person lo thwele isikwenethi?
Both. Remember, you're acting as court debtors in this. So they can do an application, go to one paying, the other one is absolved, or jointly, severally be liable for the debt. So if there's judgment against both and there are no assets in order to make sure they are fulfilled, they can do the application in terms of Section 65.
Sure. Yeah, so is it advisable, Vele? to act as a surety?
I wouldn't advise.
Because imagine, sengitfola boma arrest warrant for something that I don't even know.
I wouldn't advise. But it depends on what you literally, because other people, they're getting probably credit in order to build more income streams. Sometimes that does not work out. It becomes a problem for a surety. If it works out, then you're able to fulfill a debt until it's paid in full.
Okay.
Yeah. Plus, I mean, a surety is the only defense you have is in terms of the obligation. You cannot use my personal defense as our creditor.
Right.
So, meaning you can plead a prescription if the debt is prescribed, or if the debt has been set off or paid up, then you can plead that.
Right.
But other than that, what other defenses, unless you go against the contract of surety, it does not meet the requirements or whatever the case might be. Yeah.
Got you. Okay, asishiye lapho ke because sitawuphinda sibuye ke. Wanyana mbukeli sibambe lapho. Siseshelela ngasetitolo. Please do join us after this break. Leli Yilungelo lakho. Welcome back, Mbugele. Tinga for set volume. Ukuthi nawe ungaba ingxenye yenkulumo yethu namhla. You can call us on our studio lines on 011-714-0669 noma ke 011-714-0670. I-email yethu ke consumer@sabc.co.za. Ungasithinta futhi na ku Facebook. Namhla ke sikhuluma ke ngebungodi bekumelela lomunye etikwenetini noma ke standing as surety for someone else. Sinabochwephesha ke balendzaba. Let me also welcome uMntungwa lapha ke naye ke ungummeli utawusita ke kuyitsingisa lenzaba. Mntungwa, a warm welcome to you. Sakumukela.
Yeah, ngiyabonga baba.
Siyabonga kakhulu ke kuhlanganyela nasi ke. Just to get your perspective ukuthi ke i-surety yini nekuthi ke ngubani umuntu lekungamele ukuthi amelele lomunye noma ke lonelungelo lekumela lomunye as a surety.
Okay. Ngale ndlela leyo ibeke kahle ukuthi kahle kumela isikwelete somunye umuntu. Basically it's a third party agreement between wena necreditor yakho. Ya lo muntu yano ongene kule contract. So yona it's a separate agreement, right? And then when we asibophezela ukuthi if lo yanoqala ahlule ukubhadala uwe ke uzongena enkingeni ke uthi manje creditor kumele alande imali yakhe kubani kuwe. So ukuzibophezela kahle makunje, but only in certain circumstances wherein umuntu mangakwazi ukuthola imali yakhe kulo yaqala a decide ukuthi okay ithi ngilandele umuntu lo surety ozibophezela, kodwa fanele baqale ngayiqala banganamali babangakwazi ukuthola imali yabo, ingakho manje ba decide ukuthi okay ithi silandele obus 2. Okay. Yona ama consequences, ama pros and cons, basically it benefits more a creditor because the creditor make sure ukuthi they have security in a situation wherein lo qala uhluleka ukubhadala manje bayazi ukuthi okay ngiya kulona mhlawumbe unemali. But what we've observed in practice ukuthi basically as credit providers what they have to do if they have to make you surety, they have to make sure ukuthi barani affordability assessment bona ukuthi uzokwazi ukuyimela into le ongena kuyo. But most of the time abayezi into le. Manje umuntu unongena ku suretyship angazi ukuthi yini ama consequences mangena khona umuntu usekazithola manje ibank or bamise court sekaluza indlu yakhe sekaluza imoto because they understand ama consequences. So ukemela surety, to stand in surety, it has its own risk, but basically what it benefits is the creditor because it makes sure that there's security for the credit provider.
Also, is it a must for the creditors to ask loyal bamnika le credit ukuthi atfole umuntu who will stand in as surety, or can the creditors ask me ukuthi I should offer anything, any asset as security?
Okay.
No, surety, is it an option or is it a must?
Basically, it depends on what kind of agreement are you entering into.
Okay.
Leo khuluma ngayo, you're talking about the credit guarantee. Basically, usebenzisa imoto, usebenzisa indlu, umeka sure ukuthi okay, mawungathola imali yakho kimi, then ungathatha indlu yami. But basically, ama surety, wathola mostly ama credit providers, maybe for businesses, let's just say for businesses, basically, wherein bayazi ukuthi okay, first things first, we want someone, an individual, if we can see what the business is about to be liquidated. Yeah. So they make sure, okay, we have a security, and this person, Lona or any security, they have enough assets. Sometimes they do affordability assessment when they determine ukuthi okay unawo ama-assets enough ukuthi if angitholi imali yami kulo muntu loyana ngayithola kuye. Yona it depends. Some credit providers bafuna i-credit guarantee, bafuna yona indlu leyo, imoto, ubona ukuthi unani ebhankini. But abanye abayifuni bafuna umuntu, an individual lo siyazi ukuthi okay uzoma. For example, is when someone take a study loan, umuntu wasevarsity, they always want the parent ukuthi assign i-surety. Ukuthi bazokwazi ukuthi okay masingayitholi kumntwana wakhe, obviously masingayitholi ukuthi solanda ubaba ke or umama ke yibo bazobhadala makunjalo.
Right. Nangabeke sekendeka, and I'm going to pose the question to you as well. Ukuthi angisakhona ke ukubhadala noma ke sengilahlekelwe kumsebenzi for the duration of the agreement. Can I pull out with a surety agreement mina?
Not really. To pull out credit agreement, surety agreement basically, it's an agreement between the creditor and the surety, right? So in order for you to pull out, you cannot pull out when uwedwa because you're gonna need two. Would be fine niphume kuyo, kumele nivumelane ukuthi okay, ngicela ukuphuma, naye a consent, akunika imvume ukuthi okay, ngane waphuma kule agreement as a credit provider because by then akhipha wena ukuthi ube ungasabi surety yena angaluza imali, angaluza security leyana akubophe ngayo.
Right. And
yeah, depend ukuthi i-contract ye-suretyship ya enu inayo i-clause yokuthi uphume or not. If it doesn't, you can't. If it does allow, then you have to follow a procedure in terms of the agreement.
So what if ayinayo ke le clause ekuthi ngifuna kuphuma and then mina sengilahlekelwa ngumsebenzi phela as surety?
Then you cannot.
No, ngisho kona ukuthi ke nangabe sasicalile agreement and then for the duration in the middle of the agreement mina sengilahlekelwa ngumsebenzi I become incapacitated.
But you might be having assets that the credit provider can go against besides employment yakho.
Oh,
so
okay.
The credit provider can refuse ukuthi uphume.
Okay.
Yeah. Then should it debtor, because at this point surety only becomes enforceable once the debtor does not make payment. Phela. If we are patala until the end of the contract, then they don't have to enforce a surety agreement.
Oh,
yeah.
Okay. Because even if mina ngalahlelwa umsebenzi, but as long as le data yachubeka nje ukubhadala kahle, akungithinzi mina affect in any way. Okay.
It doesn't.
All right. Mdunga, would you recommend such an agreement, Vele, from a legal perspective?
From a legal perspective, looking at individuals, I wouldn't recommend it. But from a credit provider side, vele kumele ngiyenze because ngiyazi ukuthi okay, I have to secure myself ukuthi ngithola imali yami nanoma kanjani. If awuna mali, ngizolanda indlu, if awunandlu, ngithatha imoto. Kodwa ngiyazi ukuthi okay, someone has security ukuthi ngathola imali yami. I wouldn't recommend it for individuals, but I understand ukuthi amanye ama credit provider, ama banks, if you need a loan, they want it. So into engathi uyayibheka nakuthi ungayibalekela kodwa yena uzothola sewukuyo because you cannot get loans, you cannot get credit providers to offer services to you because awuna security. So without a suretyship, there are some agreements bakutshela ukuthi mawungana suretyship then awuyitholi. So yashabalala bakunjalo.
Okay. All right, here's where it gets tricky again. Nangabe mine as surety ngishadile in community of property, what then happens to my partner lelingishade naye?
They need to consent to the agreement. The only time your partner's consent is not required is if you are entering into a suretyship as part of a business, your employment obligation. But if it's standing on as a surety for someone else, the consent of your partner is required. It's mandatory.
Okay.
Yeah.
Uyavumelana naye?
Yes, ngivumelana naye ukuthi kumele uthole consent if you're married in community of property from your spouse. Kumele assign ukuthi okay ngiyavumelana nawe ukuthi ungene consent because he is one of the exceptions wherein i-Matrimonial Property Act ikhuluma ngayo ukuthi if you have to ungene ku suretyship kumele uthole consent. Once mawungangena without the spouse sakho singazi, that contract basically is void. So that means ayinamandla le contract leyo ye suretyship. So ingale ndlela le abanye abantu bakwazi kuyibalekela ngayo. Uyazi ukuthi okay ngena agreementini i-surety abas credit provider ayazi ukuthi mina engishadile in community of property. Manjalo ke ungayibalekela because it's void. But akhulumile usesi ukuthi if it's in the course of your business ukuthi wena vele uhlala uyenza lento lena abantu mabeza kuwe uba offer i-suretyship leyo ke ayibophi ke good. That means if you're married in community of property, spouse sakho siyazi ukuthi business yakho indlela odila ngayo business, so iyambopha naye. So that means if the debtor fails to pay, they'll go after the surety, and also the wife naye seka involved naye amassets wakhe now they'll be attached to certify isikwelede lesana esivule is the main debtor basically.
What if gesenda ke gentleman's agreement between debtor ne surety without notifying the partner or the spouse? I've entered into a suretyship agreement with this particular person, and then when they come for her, the husband or the spouse entered into such an agreement.
I think we need to define meaning a gentleman agreement, because every suretyship must be in writing. A shake of hands, a surety, no. It's not valid. It must be in writing.
Okay.
Yeah, and it's the duty of credit provider to do ama vettings, as my colleague has indicated. Yes. Credit check, the surety must also be checked. Right. So I think check marital status is part of the process, because it affects them at the end of the day if they can't enforce it. If the other party says, but now an agreement that also affects property that belongs to me, which is forming part of a joint estate, was made without my consent, it's a problem.
All right. Asishiye lapho ke mbukeli siphinza sijike la ngasentolo hlala kanye inyathi sitaphinza sibuye leli lungelo lakho. A warm welcome back, everybody. It's your right. Nobody get that fool. They are on your screens. I hope they'll be put up on the screen. There we go. 011-714-0669. Nomage 011-714-0670. Now these are participation lines. Ungashara litho kwena manje uvakalisa umbono wakho nomake ubute umbuto sinetintetfu ke namhla legal experts lataba ke kudzingidza indzaba yethu namhla sikhuluma ke ngobungoti bekumelela lomunye as a surety noma ke kumelela lomunye etikwenetini in a contractual agreement of some sort. What are some of the pitfalls that may arise out of that suretyship agreement? Now let's talk about what we call limited and unlimited surety. Yingelo mhluko between lokhu kokubili. Docela ngawe Thumekile.
Limited is where there's a specific amount prescribed to act as the surety. Unlimited, I'm not so sure about it, because now usually in terms of the law, an amount that you are acting as surety for, it must be readily ascertainable. So if you put it as unlimited, when you go claim, what value are you putting there? In terms of the law, it becomes tricky, because it's a requirement. A surety must be in writing. A surety, the amount must be ascertainable. The principal debtor's name must be indicated. And also the creditor must be indicated. So if you are saying, okay, no, this is a suretyship and it's 1 billion, and Utembegile is a surety and cannot afford that 1 billion. What happens to credit check or vetting if I'm able to qualify for it? It becomes a bit tricky.
Okay, your thoughts on limited and unlimited surety?
What I can just say, if it's limited and then you want to increase, let's just say your amount the principal debtor entered into, it's always important to totally consent surety. Which we have manje from amount moving from 50,000 le I if say 100,000, they also consent to that, and now your foot is over in the obligations whenever sign somewhere good they consent to it, because if it happens go to umuntu boleke 50,000 rand gune surety and surety ingene ezivumelane ukuthi na uvumele 50,000 rand. Once when the principal debtor uthathe imali, you cannot automatically manje ukuthi ubophe surety izobopha wena uwedwa. Man, that's why credit providers now will make sure they notify surety good, okay, there's a certain situation which is changing right now, we have umelana naso now, and would you be willing to cover this person and offer yourself as security again? But in an event surety, they refuse to give consent, so that means that loan agreement will just stick with the first person, which on the SURETY, which is the debtor in this situation.
All right. Let's take our first caller. Sina Masango ulapha ke Pitori sakumukele ehleleni sawubona. Masango in Pretoria, good afternoon. Okay, I was just Masango. Just on the point that you just made, a creditor is extending credit, isn't that a fresh contract?
It depends.
That will require the same requirements of the initial contract.
Okay, it depends because some people just add on the agreement. We call it an addendum, wherein instead of you starting from fresh, you're just adding something else on top of it. So the terms the first contract will remain the same. Just that it goes changes into. But when that agreement, that addendum, it makes reference to the first agreement. Good, okay.
But can I use that to assume, since the second contract, my terms and conditions are the first contract I apply in terms of suretyship and security?
Suretyship will only be binding for the first agreement, not the second one, because law suretyship, make sure addendum now, if they want to stand surety, they must also consent, good, okay, even the addendum, I'm going to sign in, good, okay, now I stand surety on the addendum as well, because now it's a situation which has changed. The contract has changed. So if the contract has changed, terms are coming in, someone must consent to good, okay, because automatically. There has to be consent. And because we're dealing with surety agreements, which are supposed to be in writing, then kumele uthole consent in writing.
Okay. We have Umilana. What's your thoughts?
I do agree with him.
Yeah.
Agreement was an agreement between the creditor and the principal debtor for the loan amount. Then go by agreement a suretyship that is signed by the surety, a separate. So any alteration, any amendments, the surety needs to know.
So the surety agreement, it only applies in this particular instance in the first contract, not an addendum or a follow-up contract.
Exactly. So should they not get that, the surety can use it as a defense in an instant where the debtor does not fulfill the obligation of making a payment.
Right. So let's talk about the makeup or the outlook of a contract or a suretyship agreement. Does it always have to be in writing? Can it be oral? Or can it be a video agreement? Video as a surety.
Okay. Justice Xwayiso kwabantu bonke abalaleli. It can never be oral. It has to be in writing. The fact of the matter is it has to create certainty. And certainty you can only see it into my paleo parts. Because manje if novumelana ngomlomo, unomuntu ozoyijika egcineni ukuthi hayi mina ngikhumbula into le ibeke kanje. So but if it's in writing, ke umuntu uyambopha, iyabonakala ukuthi okay uyakhumbula ukuthi uwo bhale kanje. And wavumela ukuthi uzoba surety. So manje akunaku ukuthi ungayijika because ibhaliwe leyo inama witness at times, so akunaku ukuthi ungayijika, but orally ayiyona akunakuthi ungayisa nase court uzofika lapha nomunye akhulume kanje omunye akhulume
noma ngabe kunema witness orally still it's not acceptable.
Phela kuyenzeka ukuthi ube nama witness kodwa izitori zenu uhluke. Because ama witness akunakuthi bangakhumbula yonke into. And ungakhohlwa ukuthi abantu bayashona. Ama witness bawangashona ke sala kuphi. Manje uwedwa uzothi ama witness wakho walanda kuphi ukuthi azotestify ukuthi ngempela uvumelane ukuthi wena uzingena isurety. So there has to be legal certainty basically, and that's why we have our laws ukuthi like to create certainty when it comes to contracts ukuthi ingafike court omunye athi hayi mina ngikhumbula into enje omunye athi ngikhumbula into enje. Abantu bayashona isikhathi siyahamba abantu bayakhona.
Yes. All right, let's take our first caller. Sina Masango ulapha ke Pitori sakumukela Masango ehlelweni sawubona. Masango from Pretoria, good afternoon. Hawu Masango afuna ukukhuluma nathi namhla.
Hello.
Masango, there we go. Sakumukela ehlelweni Masango sawubona.
Hello.
Yes, Masango. Can you hear me?
Hello.
Siyakumukela baba, you are on air. You are live on air.
Hello.
Hayi ngathi asivani kana Masango. Sicela ukuthi uvale iTV yakho Masango and then talk to us.
Hello.
Yes, that's as fun. Mina nabasang namhla. All right, Thembekile, ngicela ukuthi what's your thoughts on the structure, how a suretyship agreement is structured? Oral, video, in print.
Firstly, credit providers are usually your big banks, and they would do everything to protect themselves in a sense that they would want to recover their cost. So I don't think they would allow a video suretyship. They would want it to be in writing, because initially they're the ones about create a contract our surety, and we have on another way bawa structuring akon ukuthi ba make sure ukuthi ba in a position yokuthi ba recover imali yabo back.
And then now in terms of technological advancements ukuthi nyalo sekulula ke kuthatha I video with the witnesses khona la kule video basho nabo ukuthi cha nami ngiyamvumela.
Yeah, but surety it's not really mandatory ukuthi kube nama witnesses. It must just be signed by umuntu or conclude. No, it's not mandatory. It must just be signed. Then you must make sure the principal debt, the amount that you are standing surety in is readily ascertainable.
Yes.
One, you must make sure the principal debtor's details are indicated. No, guti ustenda surety for what debt, what kind of debt. Yeah, there's no requirements for ama witnesses.
Okay.
So if you do video surety, what do you say? I am the debtor standing in as surety for a credit against FNB. For them, it'll make more sense for them to have it in writing.
To have it in writing, yeah. Okay, what's in that contract? What are some of the key details that are reflected in that agreement?
Okay, my key details is that you are standing in on a surety for a specific. Okay, I've seen mostly our commercial transaction wherein a company is applying for a debt, then they use a director to stand in as the surety.
Okay.
Ne? Then it will indicate to the amount a standard in surety for. They waive any defenses. Or no, I didn't stand in as a surety, or whatever the case might be. Because the only defenses that they can use are obligations, which is if the claim has prescribed. Maybe go against the principal debtor.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. Then 3 years. After 3 years, then they decide, okay, it is try against the surety because debtor also raise a claim a prescription. No surety the claim has prescribed. Or in a case where debtor has paid in full or set off, they applied set off debt, then that's when I plead other thing. The debt has been extinguished either by set off or it's fully paid. Yeah. Then what else does it include? It also includes my details for surety.
Okay.
Yeah. No, a credit check. Then there's a clause where they saying debtor cannot place itself under a debt review. The surety. Yes, they cannot. And
for the duration of that contract.
Yes. And should status, if the surety change, sometimes it can affect the initial credit. That means one of the if surety is under a debt review, they can call up the acceleration clause to recover their full amount, because now that means the debtor is no longer secured.
Okay.
Yeah, because the whole purpose of getting surety is to make sure they secure it debt. In an instance where they are unable to recover the cost from the debtor, they'll recover it from a surety. But surety liquidated or are under debt review, how are they going to recover my cost? Because they have payment arrangements that they are making, and yeah.
All right, for now, let's take another commercial break. Leli Yilungelo Lakho. We'll be right back. Sikwamukela futhi mbukeli, khumbula ukuthi incingo tethu sesivuliwe ukuthi nami ungaba ingcenye inkulumo namhlanje. Ungashela incingo khona manje ku 011-714-0669 noma ke 011-714-0670. Ungasithumela futhi ne-email ku consumer@sabc.co.za or interact with us on our social media platforms, in particular Facebook. Let's take on our first caller. Sina Masango lapha ePitoli. Masango sabuyele ehleleni sawubona.
Yebo baba kunjani?
Hey, sengimangele ukuthi sesicatshaniswe yini manje thine nawe singasakhona ukuchumana. Okay, what's on your mind baba? Khuluma nathi.
Yebo baba. Nginenkinga ne about your surety. Hello?
Uthi usayinele umuntu as a surety.
Hello?
Ya, qhubeka baba.
Hello?
Qhubeka siyakuva. Masango siyakuva baba qhubeka.
Yeah, ngine problem endaba ye surety enikhuluma ngayo ne. My problem is if you're talking about the surety, my understanding, if you go somewhere, maybe go to borrow the money, or you make the contract for something, you buy it to and pay it. Why they need the surety? Because everything you borrow money or you buy something, if you pay every month, in that money that you're paying every month, there's the insurance. If I can't continue to pay it, the insurance might pay it up because I've got a problem. That means if you say I must need the surety, if I borrow money or if I buy the property, if I can't to pay full up that the property, my surety must continue to pay that insurance. What about my child? Let's say I'm dying. Who's gonna continue to pay? That guy who made for me the surety, they must continue to pay for my child for that property. That is not true. Everything that you make it, the contract. I make a contract for, let's say I'm buying the house. It's a contract for 20 years.
Yeah.
If after 15 years I'm dying, who's gonna pay up that house for 5 years? My insurance of that house, where I make the contract in the bank, they must buy for me the house, I'm gonna pay that for 20 years. They must pay up that house, my child, they don't have to pay that 5 years. But now, if they say they need the surety, I got the problem. What they did, that means they make a business about the people that they need properties, about the people that maybe they want to open the business. I go to the bank. I want to borrow, let's say, 500,000. I want to open the business. That money I borrow in the bank, it got insurance. They do not need somebody to be insured for me. It got in insurance. If I can't continue to pay that money, maybe I'm dying, maybe I collapse in my business, the insurance might be paid up.
Okay. All right, Masango, thank you so much. You're raising very valid points. We do appreciate that. I've picked up two issues who comment here, Masango. One, ukuthi sonke sikwenedi sine insurance. Nangabeke le insurance ikhona, so what's the point of having a surety? Two, ukhuluma ukuthi ke nangabe uyafa ke yena ke, what happens to the status of that agreement? Does it mean ukuthi ma descendants noma ma dependents are taking over that particular debt? Dr. Langathumbekile. Okay.
So what I picked up from Ubaba Masango ne, now I'm alone. They've made sure ukuthi bagenza ukuthi ubhatale for I credit life, right? Which is the insurance. And that insurance, in an event uluza umsebenzi, it will only pay for a couple of months to give you time to find employment. Then in an instance where you die, it will pay off the amount that is owed. Then go home loan. Go home loan, not everyone takes a life policy on the property. Other people take a life policy, then by counselor as time goes by. Amanye, they are included. I realize I do a lot of estates. Other people decide to take a building insurance instead of a credit life over the debt. Ne? Then in an instant where they die, building insurance does not assist them anyway, because the building insurance is for when there's damage or destruction to the building. Then in that case, the debt is not covered. Then good business, usually, most business, insurance is not really mandatory. Good business, they use the director of the company as a surety. Should they not be able to pay, then they go straight against director on their personal capacity for the amount that is outstanding.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So he makes it seem as if it's mandatory. Yes, for AMA loan, because they are covered by the National Credit Act, but not all loans are covered by the National Credit Act. It goes back in a limit. If your loan is over 250,000, you are automatically not covered by the National Credit Act.
Okay.
If your annual turnover exceeds 1 million, you are also automatically kicked out. So other loans, bafunu secure, they want in surety.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Ndunga, so let's address two issues manje amasango lapha ukuthi ke insurance nangabe leyo loan inayo le insurance, what's the point of a surety nekuthi ke what happens nangabe ke surety iyashona, does it mean ukuthi ama dependents are taking over or that's the end of the road?
Okay. Ngifuna ukuthi uqala ukuthi siyenze umehluko between credit insurance and also surety. Those are two different things. Credit insurance, it's when you take credit and we ask, okay, every month I'm going to pay an additional amount to cover if there are in areas, if maybe or if maybe I pass away at times, but for a certain time, because it stipulates it cannot, sometimes it cannot cover the entire loan that you've taken, but it can only cover you for, basically for 6 months. Let's just say for 6 months. If it's still fresh, it covers you for 6 months. But in terms of a surety, they must cover for the entire loan. Basically, if you 35,000, a surety, they must make sure they pay off that 500,000. Should you default, they're covered to pay the entire amount, not only for a couple of months. So umehluko ilapho credit insurance, again, sometimes it is optional, but sometimes by require bank okay, you must take it, especially when you're taking a home loan. They can sometimes actually okay, funa uthatha insurance, but credit insurance. But when you speak to those people with credit insurance, it's either you take they are independent or abanye bahamba nebank. They'll tell you okay, if we're gonna cover you, it's how much, because okay, life insurance, they tell you okay, we're gonna cover you for R1 million. This is how much you're gonna be paying every month. But now if the credit agreement that you've taken, it's exceeding that R1 million, it's maybe 2 million, and then the life insurance pays the 1 million. What happens to the 1 million that's remaining? You see, if you had a surety pays as good, okay, surety, you have to pay that outstanding 1 million. But now, if there's a default, when it comes to credit insurance, the banks, they'll make sure, okay, if you cannot pay, that means you must give back the house. Okay. They'll go for the house, obviously, after suing you, because kumele basuke kuqala asithi uyashona ke ngale ndlela la bank account kwamasango ke. Mawushona, obviously, bank, when you enter deceased estate, they'll want to get their money from somewhere else, because one thing for sure, when you're dealing with banks,
where is this somewhere else?
Somewhere else is when you deceased estate.
So they will go for my estate.
They'll go for your estate, because now the estate because the estate has some property, so it has to pay for something. That's why when we advertise estate, you're calling all creditors good. Okay, note that this person has passed away, and so you guys can lodge your claims with Master of the High Court just to notify them good. Okay, you're a creditor. This person owes you money. So first thing first, creditors, they'll get their money. Always they know good. Okay, if we cannot get it by surety, credit insurance, but we'll get the money. Hence why if you default or you pass away and then there's no one paying the bond, the bank will obviously come for the property even if you've passed away.
I think that's of importance to highlight. Not all transactions require surety that you do with the bank. Okay. So the ones that don't require surety, that's when you have the insurance to make sure ukuthi mawuluza umsebenzi izokhavera for that duration, yes, 6 months or whatever. Yes. Or should you die, it will pay a specific amount, or it pays what is owed.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So I see Sheila. Okay. All right. Let's now take a final break. We'll be right back. Yilungelo Lakho. Sanamukela ke mbukeli ke, thank you so much for tuning in. Namhla ke nje, if you just joined us, sikhuluma ke ngekuthi ke bungoti yini bekumelela lomunye umuntu etindzabeni tema contracts. Like, what are the pitfalls of standing as surety for someone else? Now, just before we wrap the show, asasikhuluma ke ngekuthi ke kendeka yini ukuthi siyishintshe i-suretyship agreement. Can you alter it?
Between whom? With data, no surety, or
Between data and surety?
You can't.
We cannot.
Yes, you must also include credit.
Okay.
Because remember, suretyship agreement is an agreement between the creditor and the surety.
Yes, yes. Okay, Ndungu?
Yeah, ngalendlela la ebeka ngakhona ngithanda uyibeke straight forward to the point. You cannot alter it. Akunakuthi ungayisusa, especially between the debtor and the surety, because it's not between them. It's between the credit provider and the surety. Yibo bangayichange logo, but it has to be reduced in writing, and futhi there has to be consent. Usually ngalendlela le ngizoexplain ngakhona ukuthi ama contract they have something what we call a variation clause, wherein iyavumela ukuthi okay, contract ungayishintsha, kodwa it has to be in writing, and bonke abantu labo ba enter kuyo kumele ba sign ukuthi okay, siyavumelana ukuthi contract ichangewe, so siya sign phansi nathi ukuthi siyaqeda lento ukuthi seyivaliwe ukuthi sesignile yonke into. So akunakuthi omunye umuntu angashintsha manje athi mina bengazi ukuthi lento le ichangeile, so ubeka kanjalo nje.
Okay. We know ukuthi ekuqaleni kwale show ke nasaqala, both of you you advised against surety agreement. So what is it that consumers need to know as we wrap the show? Ukuthi ke yini kumele bakwati before undertaking a suretyship agreement?
Okay,
maybe you can start.
I can start. Basically, ngifuna ukuthi before enter into any type of agreement, ifunde kuqala.
Oh yes.
Know the terms and conditions imigomo nemibandela yakhona, wazi ukuthi ubinda yini and yini ama consequences. And futhi into engizoyadvise ukuthi always consult someone oyaziyo nge-laws, either an attorney or someone who's well versed when it comes to legal stuff, because sometimes the contract you can find it's 20 pages. I understand ukuthi kwenzakalani, but because the agency siphithi ukuthi ufuna imali or ufuna whatever that you're applying for, you just sign, but I understand ama consequences. Ila bashaya khona abantu abaningi. Please read the contract before. If you don't understand it, approach a lawyer, approach someone who can just help you with regards to our terms and conditions, because they are complicated for our lay persons.
All right. Thank you so much for joining us.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
Hayi ngibukele sesifika kanjalo ke maphethelweni nehlelo lethu namhla. Ngicela bonga ke ema guest ethu ukusihlanganyela kuze kube nathi kuze kube manje. It's been an absolute pleasure, and these are the contact details that you need to call for any other consumer related information. Sihlangane kanyathi ke isikhathi lesitako. Thank you so much for watching. Bye bye.
Yilungelo